Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rachayita Siddharth, and on behalf of Logistics Insider, I welcome you all to this year's edition of Budget Pe Charcha, where we will be analyzing and decoding the Union Budget 2023 from the logistics and supply chain point of view. As our Finance Minister, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, presented this year's budget on 1st February, the whole country rejoiced. And so did the supply chain industry. This year's budget has been called a landmark one. And that's by industry leaders and industry experts. And why not so? That's certainly true. This year's budget focuses on infrastructure creation as well as skill development. And that's among the many other things that it brings. And all of that has a direct impact on the logistics sector, especially the infrastructure and skill development. The very critical agenda of sustainable development was also talked about at length during the budget announcement under the green growth provisions and initiatives. And the budget provides highest outlay ever for the railways, the Indian railways this year, which is expected to give a boost to not only the railways infrastructure in India, but it will also hopefully result in an increased share of rail in freight transportation across the country. Additionally, the 100 critical transportation infrastructure projects, along with new airports, heliports, and water aerodomes, will work towards amplifying the domestic connectivity in the country. Now, as I talked about, there is an increased focus on creation of various educational and skilling centers that will work towards improving the human resource of the industry that is available to the industry. And along with that comes with the initiatives to enhance technology adoption with investment and R&D facilities across the country. And there's, of course, there's so much more to be discussed because the budget announced so many things, so many provisions, so many new initiatives that have a great impact on logistics and supply chain sector. And to carry the discussion forward, I'd like to introduce and invite our esteemed speakers for today. And I'll start with our moderator, Mr. Srikumar Krishnamurthy. He has been associated with ICRA Limited for over 13 years and is a part of the corporate rankings ratings group. He has extensive experience in evaluating credit profiles of companies across automotive, hospitality, consumer products, and retail. Welcome to the show, Sri Kumar.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Now, next, I'd like to welcome Mr. Tushar Jani, chairman of the CSC Group India. In the past 12 years, Mr. Jani has taken the CSC Group to the zenith of success with his rich practical knowledge about domestic and international exim movement, among the many other things that he is an expert at. Now, those who know Mr. Jani swear by his humble and close to roots nature, and he is in true sense a pillar of the industry's leadership fraternity. We are honored by your presence on the show, Mr. Jani.
Thank you, Rachitya, and good afternoon to all. Looking forward for meaningful discussion.
Great. Now, today's event is bejured by another gem of the industry, Dr. Anil Chinnabhandar, Senior Vice President, Retail Planning and Supply Chain, Landmark Group. Now, Dr. Chinnabhandar is passionate about transforming business to more value driven and innovative and profitable organizations and brings strong work ethics and greater ownership of end to end business activities. Thank you so much, Mr. Chinnabhandar, for joining us today.
Thank you, Chaita, and very glad to be actually part of the discussion and looking forward actually as well.
Well, it is indeed a pleasure and a privilege for the three of you to have here with us today, and I'm sure today's show is going to be, really perspective and super interesting. Now, this is for the lovely audience that have joined in online with the live session. I understand that you may have a lot of questions as well as suggestions. So please write them down in the comments box and we will try to address them as the session proceeds. So without any further delay, I hand over the reins to you, Sri Kumar. Please take the show forward.
Thank you, Rachayita. Hello, everyone, and welcome you all to this panel discussion on the post-budget analysis on Indian logistics industry. Before we move forward, let's first look at a larger picture and the environment behind which this budget has been prepared. As there is a slowdown in multiple geographies, the Russia-Ukraine war is not over yet. Any escalations in tensions and a resultant rise in say commodity prices or other critical costs could be detrimental across the world, and it has a direct impact on us. We did see to what extent the kind of fertilizer subsidy doubled last year as a result of the sharp rise in international prices. Domestically, we have had 4 consecutive years of normal seasons, normal monsoons. The risk of monsoon falling below normal levels cannot be ruled out, and it could hit agriculture production and can also impact the food prices. In this backdrop, the Union budget for FY24 that has been presented by our Honorable Finance Minister has prudently raised the high multiplier capital spending while simultaneously pursuing the fiscal consolidation, aided by the cushion provided by the sharp decline in subsidy burden. Moreover, it focused on increasing the outlay on green growth policies while providing tax benefits to the economic agents, including citizens, MSMEs, and cooperatives. Overall, the government has estimated a narrowing in its fiscal deficit to 5.9% of GDP in FY24 from 6.4% of GDP in FY23, while reiterating its commitment to reaching sub 4.5% of GDP by FY26. In this context, we will discuss the key proposals of the Union budget on logistics sector, which is a critical engine for the overall growth of the economy. It's extremely imperative to have strong policies around demand creation on a sustainable basis so that all the end user segments are benefited. Let's hear it out from our panel members on their views on the budget. First, I would like to invite Mr. Tushar sir to provide his initial remarks on the budget. Sir, if we have to talk about the key proposals, specifically the sharp rise in the capital investment outlay and a dedicated allocation towards railways. This, if we have to look at as a continuation to the national logistics policy that was announced last year, how do you view the kind of commitment of the government or the announcements towards increase in capital, capex allocation, and the resulting infrastructure development and the potential for the logistics industry? If we can start with that.
Thank you, Mr. Krishnamurthy. If I can address your three. I think so. It was, the journey started with PM Gati Shakti program, actually. And I see those as a big announcement, and now we are continuing with the budget. So PM Gati Shakti, if you study a national policy and ULIP, and you look at government impetus towards the logistic and to ensure that logistic cost comes down, was a very imperative, solid decision for our economy in our GDP. Just to give you a little what is happening the worldwide, we're part of the US-India strategic group. In that discussion on the business, in a 2-hour interaction, the supply chain was mentioned about 190 times in the discussion. Now, that's the importance of supply chain now. The cross-border, the domestic, the within continent, and so on and so forth. I think so what government has done very rightly prior to PM Gati Shakti program was to create those milestones and those avenues where we need an improvement, which is inland waterways, the river waters, the coastal, the dedicated freight corridor, the industrial corridor, the transformation of northeast via Bangladesh, river transport. I think these are all very remarkable and revolutionary things what has happened. And last, of course, it has happened on tourists, but that's some huge length of river tourist that Prime Minister inaugurated, which will go for various rivers and pass through. I think those are significant things. And, if you look at ULIP, if that gets successful, it will change the way we operate in the logistic industry. I think the government has realized now it's not only the infrastructure, but the processes and technology both has to be enabler. Now you can multiply infrastructure if your processes are simple. And I always give this simple example. When you arrive as a passenger, why we need to endorse our passport as an Indian coming home, right? Put the scanner, then suddenly all those counters will go away and you'll be faster. Simple thing like that, which is going to come, which will come ultimately. But government has done quite a bit using technology, I must say that. But in terms of the processes, what is done on the income tax, in terms of using technology, is not done enough vis-a-vis the indirect tax is concerned. We still need to use larger amount of technology to make it more enable. If you look at this particular budget in continuation of Gati Shakti, which was 1,40,000 crore, dedicated freight corridor, dedicated rail corridor, inland waterways, and adding that now to the 75,000 crore for the infrastructure for last mile delivery. And I think the last mile delivery, if the way I read the budget is more for the agro. We still have 38% losses in fruits and vegetables in this country when we don't get food and we have a lot of poor people, right? So I think that impetus which will help in building greenhouses, storage places, pack houses, closer to the market, and that will bring a lot of change in couple with 50 airports, in couple with the UDAN scheme. Just to give you an example, small example, the chili out of Assam, which is called Bhutia chili. Now, this is the most hottest chili in the world. They've never seen the world. But now in the UDAN scheme, it is able to see the world. We are looking at kiwi out of Tripura or, pineapple out of Tripura now seeing the world. And can you believe what price they were being sold? 50 paisa kilo, right, by the farmer, which is now raising to 25 rupees a kilo. I think that's a change which will come. Mango from UP area, Taseri mango, which never seen in the world. Now it's gone to the world. Also domestic, you will see a lot of women coming into the agro. Also the biggest advantage, the pharma and domestic, which is still not tapped, and I give this example, you go to chemist shop and ask pharmacy to give me a discount. The man gives you 10% or 5% discount on the spot. Now we are all supply chain guys. If you go backward, if the guy is given 5% at the retail and, I'm sure sir, big part of retail will probably support me, backward will be 60 to 70%. Now that's a leakage in supply chain. We can make pharma more affordable than what is being, given to the patient today. And look at other last point I will put in on the vaccine. India has shown to the world the supply chain of vaccine. And I remember before the COVID vaccine to be distributed, government was quite worried. We went and told the government, don't worry about it. You already have. We have analyzed it. Because the polio vaccine, you had all complete network. So we said, give us the vaccine, rest you leave it to us. Not only that, as an industry, we had volunteered that our delivery boys also can go and give vaccine if you train them. So that's a kind of partnership when, and government is quite sensitized into it, and which is reflecting the budget, which is 75,000 crore, first mile, last mile connectivity, 50 airports, railway, which is the highest allocation, and railway mobility is unbeaten. And last, three things, MSME, which is because the logistic is all MSME, right? The support which is going to come through MSME in better loans, soft loans, and skill. After probably the agriculture, if I include railway into our sector, we are the largest employer of in the country, and that skill development will really help. And one last event which government this time has decided is set up the infrastructure secretariat. Nobody realized, but the port, the PPP which was signed for JNPT and some other ports, 12 major ports, which government has amended. It was very badly worded PPP, and government has shown that courage to amend. And Mr. Srikumar, you will understand, being in finance world, to amend those clauses needs a courage. So I think that we have shown courage, we've shown the path, and I believe this is the right opportunity for logistic industry to grab and grow our influence. Thank you.
Great, sir. That's quite interesting to hear, sir. And you spoke about the last mile connectivity, but there is very specific comments about the proposal around identification of the 100 critical transport infrastructure projects for both last mile as well as first mile connectivity for sectors like ports, coal, steel, fertilizer, and food grains. I would like to bring Dr. Anil sir here. Would like to take your views on this particular discussion point. It appears that the government's focus is not only creating demand via seamless distribution of movement of goods, but also it appears it has to be done more efficiently. So sectors like say retail and a few other end user industries can benefit much better manner, so that there are efficiency gains across the system. Your views, sir.
Well, Shri, in fact, once again, thanks for the opportunity, and then kind of, expressing probably the views from, the retail side of things. I would like to, just even step back few, probably, steps, and then kind of, recollect when I came back to India, decided to come back to India about 10, 12 years ago, looking at the way the Indian businesses was taking off, and then taking off, and then the modern retail was taking off, because working for the global retailers for the preceding 15, 17 years, it really gave a lot of us actually huge hope of being part of a transformational lifetime journey, particularly as a part of the larger logistics fraternity. In fact, coming from Australia and then Southeast Asia, few things we were always looking: logistics index, for example, and then the efficiencies of our roads, efficiencies of our railways, efficiencies of our shipping industry, and all that. So we were always dangling bottom of the ladder, bottom of the list, and so on. So it was always kind of very keenly sought after, very keenly fought for space for me, particularly for the last, probably the good part of the first term of Modi's government, and also the subsequent one. You can very clearly see there is a determined, in fact, approach to completely transform the industry as a whole. So in that sense, I think it's a greatly forward-looking, progressive, and growth-oriented budget, and then with a very, very specific areas, right? Such as what you both gentlemen mentioned about spend on the infrastructure. For example, talking about 3.3% of GDP being spent on infrastructure. It's a huge, actually, commitment and a huge statement in the world, actually, world scale. I mean, we are about almost like, almost 50% of our GDP, we are saying, we are going to actually commit to this. So, which is a very, very huge statement. Similarly, like commitment towards net zero, which is a big thing for me, because I've always been talking about sustainable supply chain, sustainable logistics, practices and all that. So I think even though 2070 looks like a very far, actually, kind of a far away target and so on, but then there are very specific and realistic points or actions, in fact, included in this budget. Similarly, like skills development is very, very close to my heart. I've always been saying this for the last decade. Logistics and supply chain is going to probably create the largest number of jobs for the next 50, 60, 80 years in this country, far more than what IT or even BT has created, because supply chain logistics is one area where you need right from truckloads of unskilled people all the way to data scientists, logisticians, and AI/ML actually people, all those people, right? So it's a huge gamut of actually workforce that we require. In fact, for the last almost good 7 or 8 years, we've been canvassing in whichever forum we get to emphasize on practicing or providing logistics and supply chain training and skill set right from high schools, ITIs, diplomas, engineering, and all that. So I've always expressed this, in a very, very blunt and open manner, saying that why don't we have a Bachelor of Engineering in Logistics, which is a fundamental kind of a fundamental driving driving force, in fact, to creating some of these high tech or highly skilled workforce. So therefore, even getting some of these focus in the budget for skills development is also is very, very good. But what excites me is the kind of progress we have made already on the infrastructure side of things. I mean, I yesterday traveled from Bangalore to my farmhouse, which is about 70 odd kilometers. I traveled through the newly built Bangalore Mysore Expressway. I mean, it's an amazing and an unbelievable actually commitment or a statement actually from the government side of it, because you just enter and then whatever used to take about 4 hours journey, you are completing in 90 minutes. This is unheard of in India. From the transport side of it or logistics side of it or a retail perspective, if you ask me, what used to actually take almost like, per day, the trucks used to do 350, 300 or, 275 kilometers per day. Today, the trucks can easily do 1,000 kilometers or close to it. I mean, from Bangalore to all the way to Vishakhapatnam or actually Vijayawada or Trivandrum, I'll be able to supply overnight, which in itself is a huge capability, as a retailer I'm talking about. So therefore, focus on some of these critical infrastructure, developments, including the intelligent transport systems and so on, which the commerce, the minister actually has spoken about in her budget speech, which in itself is actually a huge commitment. Similarly, the new airports that we are talking about, the heliports or even water aerodromes actually, and also the advanced landing zones, which, Gadkari ji, very, very, happily kind of, puts it or publishes, every now and then. I think all of them are certainly trying to push India towards probably the top 50 logistics industry index actually, space, which means it is actually very, very progressive, and then we can hope a lot of good things to come up. So in terms of Tusharji mentioned about actually the agri sector, you mentioned about agri sector also. I live almost 3 days a week in my farmhouse, which is in the middle of actually the farming sector. I mean, I can see very clearly how many people don't even get 10 rupees per kilo for some of the farm produce. I mean, I've been kind of canvassing on this. Why can't we give the vacuumized actually or vacuum driven kind of a storage tanks and things like that at a cooperative level and all that. And I'm so happy to see that being made as actually a mandate, and then a lot of funding is given to that. I think this is going to transform the entire supply chain industry, creating smaller warehouses, creating highly efficient warehouses, creating world-class warehousing facility closer to the farming sector. I think this is going to rewrite the history of actually not only the Indian retail, but Indian economy as such, but also more so the modern retail and also the modern consumption as well. So a lot of these things are giving probably too much of hope for people like me, because I think I'm already on cloud nine looking at and waiting for some of these things to come for the last decade and a bit. I think Commerce Minister has almost spoken like a supply chain and logistics minister, and then kind of, given so much of importance to all these details and kind of, exciting or keeping a lot of us excited, of the things, yet to come, maybe the next, 10, 20, 50 years actually. So it's a very, very promising and a very progressive actually, budget, which we can all hope to build on, because there is a lot of responsibility on us as logisticians and supply chain professionals and retailers. In fact, we have to kind of make this work. Now that the government has actually shown us the path, we have to, kind of hold it and then kind of, run with it. I think that's where my excitement is actually, kind of, tripled, quadrupled or whatever. So, we are very, very happy with actually the opportunities, ahead of us.
Great, sir. Quite interesting to hear that, sir. We always talk about the fact that the proposals are made, but eventually sometimes the implementation becomes a challenge. Tushar sir, I will come to you over here. Some of our past experiences in terms of the proposals kind of getting implemented is kind of handicapped by multiple reasons. The critical one being the financing aspect. So one of the bottlenecks for the capex spend in the past have always been that the availability of adequate funding, infra-related funding was not there. But in this budget, it appears that that is also kind of taken care to a large extent. They have provided a avenue for funding. There is a 50-year interest-free loans to states with an outlay of over 1.3 lakh crore to boost infrastructure. And there is a urban infrastructure development fund that has been formed. How do you see this with regard to the ideology behind setting up these funds? And how practical do you think that the financing will get secured in a much favorable manner? Because the industry always requires, more specifically infrastructure requires a longer maturity, relatively softer interest rates, that kind of a thing. So what is your perspective on this?
Well, I think so. Uh, it's going to create a competitive spirits among states. Now, logistics is a relay game. If one state is performing and the other state not performing, you can't connect India, right? So, like say, Maharashtra is more efficient, and for some reason, suppose say Andhra Pradesh is not very efficient. You can't play that game. I think so. Government is what is trying to do, and I don't know whether you've noticed that, but the government has come out with a logistic state index for each state, how they perform. So there is already a belief of competitive spirit when on that index. Now giving this opportunity for them to borrow money and create infrastructure. So you will see a lot of competition among states to provide those kind of infrastructures and impetus to the logistic. Some states already declared their logistic policy. UP is coming with a big logistic policy. So also now the government will set up port or say airport, but the connectivity to the port, airport, of course, is a state subject. And I remember, Dr. Anil, since you live in Bangalore, the Bangalore airport earlier was built, but the state was not providing connecting road. So the airport operator had to build 68-kilometer road into Bangalore airport at his own cost, right?
Correct.
So I think that part would go because ultimately it's state which has to build this infrastructure because these are state matter, right? And it has to be a real good partnership. I think the partnership is coming now slowly clear. Inland waterways has been mapped. Government is putting those terminals. Government is putting main highways, roads, connecting roads now has to come by the state government. The airports are created, but connectivity to the airport. I mean, we all have seen in Mumbai, the Mumbai-Pune Expressway, which was built by Mr. Gadkari when he was a state PWD minister, has given a boom, right? How much traffic has increased between Mumbai and Pune? And same what I hear from Dr. Anil about Mysore and Bangalore now. I hear Delhi to Dehradun would be in 2 hours' time, right? Meerut, which was away and very difficult to go through, is only about 45 minutes now. So I think that's going to change, and that is going to change in the logistic per se, the retail, modern retail, and also for the e-commerce. You will see the e-commerce penetration now in town, not only third and fourth, but we're talking fifth and sixth. Now imagine India has 789,000 villages, out of which 200,000 villages are population about 10,000.
Wow.
Now those are your potential market for e-commerce. Now this last mile, what we are talking, maybe it is now perceived for fertilizer or coal or whatever maybe, but you will need this last mile to reach to that customer. And very important, you have to reach this customer. You want to stop them coming to the city. How you will stop coming them to city? That you build the services or the availability of the merchandise at that village without them coming to the city. So you need, Dr. Anil, you will need nice little small format of modern shopping mall on those villages. You will need e-commerce delivery on those villages. And can you imagine 200,000 villages if I employed 10 delivery boys in each village? I've created at least 20 million jobs, right? Just to deliver. That's the power which we will have. And the e-commerce will just, just scratch the surface. But government has to make the processes very simple, whether airway bill or whatever they have got. They need to make it simple. If they make it simple, you're going to see a blast. You're going to see a revolution. And 1.4 billion people, you can't get a better market, right? They have to eat, they have to wear, they have to write, they have to see, right? Everything you need. And your disposable income with all this infrastructure development will be higher for the people who are living in the village or somewhere. So what I agree with Dr. Anil, if we fail, we will fail only on the skilled manpower. And that's my biggest worry. because logistics sector is still not feel very sexy when it comes to a job selection for the children, right? They're looking at more of IT or banking or retail, right? So that's the issue. I think that we've lost Dr. Anil on connectivity.
Yeah, I think team would check with him. Sir, in the meanwhile, on the funding part, sir, if we can talk about the
See,
focus around
the,
funding.
the funding, I think we must create that avenue. And I'm quite excited with MSME even, the funding which government is putting. Because, there are 1.5 million truck operator
Wow.
having average 4 trucks. And the Indian trucking cost, Dr. Anil, is the lowest in the world. At 5 rupees a kilo, if you calculate into a cents, you can't calculate that. You're covering from north to east and east to west,
True.
and north to south, just $5 a kilo. Where
Correct.
you can get this kind of, so when people talk about the logistic cost, it is not fueled by logisticians like us. Our costs are lowest in the world. It is the finance cost, which is on the inventory cost, which is bringing the higher logistic cost. The Indian logistic, in terms of performing, we are the lowest cost. So I think that we have done well on that. And with the government, after so many years, we got. Because I remember when I used to go as a young man in 1976 for a business, I would never see a managing director ever in my life. At the best, I'll see some assistant manager logistic will see me and, forget about it. Today, we are called in discussion of supply chain, strategy, marketing strategy, penetration. And, Dr. Anil said he was right about data science. Our company has vision by 2035, we will be a predictive science company. Today, I can predict what pharma India would ship it in next 3 years.
Wow.
Now, that's
Perfect.
the kind of data we are sitting on it, right? Today in Blue Dart, we move something like 3 million parcels every day. From where to where, what it is containing, how it is going, why he's asking, we have all pattern. If Dr. Anil has, order atta 3 times a week, right? We have that data with us. Now imagine that power. And if we start collaborating those data in the proper manner, India can become the biggest market of the world. Let me tell you, we're talking about infrastructure and all. United States, the air cargo complex at JFK Airport, sir, the warehouses are built of 1940. And the trucks wait about 10 hours before they go into JFK Airport and take the cargo out. Today in Frankfurt Airport, the truck has to wait 9 hours. Now, that's not the case in India anymore. Today, you can, our vision is in the air cargo, if the passenger gets out of airport within 30, 45 minutes, why not air cargo? It has also come by air. Why it should stop? Now, that's the kind of vision industry is working. So you're going to see a complete revolution change. And as I said, government must change the processes. They're still outdated process. Custom Act, which is 1962, does not recognize container. Can you believe that? It recognizes ship. Now, container is part of a ship, which is extended up to the warehouse. But now container is shipped by Dr. Anil's warehouse, right? Not shipped by us. His people shipped in. So what comes to our port is said to contain. But the ship reaches to India, and if there is a wrong cargo in it, right, in the container, the ship captain is responsible and they will arrest ship captain as per the law. Now we need to change this law. Ship captain poor guy doesn't know. The ship comes and turns around in 3 hours. That's how the world is operating. So, we need to change the law, like say containers. For domestic container, you have separate policy. International container, you have separate policy. Containers are containers. They are unique number. If I'm sending to Dr. Anil's factory for an export cargo to be picked up, container is going empty. Why I should not use that container for domestic movement, going into his factory and make money out of it or make his cost lower. Now, those rules have to change. So these are the importance we need to give it to the rules changing. Transshipment. Look at Bangladesh today is dying to have transshipment into India. They're landlocked countries. Nepal, we can support them. Sri Lanka has become the biggest transshipment hub, but that should be India actually.
Sure,
Sri Lanka should
absolutely.
be shipping into India. So I think that we need to put now this onto the large map to bring power, cost down, because logistics is semi-fixed cost, right? If you increase your volume, your cost per unit goes down considerably. And of course, the employment to the youth. So that took a little longer, Sri, but over to you.
Sure. That was pretty exhaustive response, sir. I'll now move to Anil, sir. So this is regarding the digitization aspects. The word digitalization was used in multiple places in the economic survey as well, and again it was emphasized in the budget. There is a 6,000 crore specific allocation towards digitalization. And there are announcements like creation of a financial information registry as a central repository, and also expansion of DigiLocker services for fintechs.
Absolutely, yes.
These are kind of attempted at aiming the ease of doing business. So to what extent? Because this industry certainly digitization is important, and more importantly, the way of doing things has to be much faster. So your thoughts on the kind of proposals around digitization?
Right. So again, I think Sri, it comes down to actually the journey that we have been embarked upon. For example, 10, 11 years ago, 12 years ago, when I came into the country, deciding to quit all the so-called, the comfortable life actually back in Australia with the holiday house and all sorts of cars and all that. I mean, some of the things that we were talking about was, how do we make, the processes here, or how do we make the businesses actually sustainable, and also kind of go towards like minimalized energy and so on. So we ended up actually doing, be it Future Group or actually Landmark Group or any of our competitors and so on, right? We ended up doing the entire warehousing space as paperless. I mean, you'll be glad to know this, that most of the warehouses today, all the modern warehouses today in India, they are paperless. Everything is done actually through RF or RFID, or some sort of voice or conveyors, and then automation and so on, which is a really good in its own kind of achievement. Now this particular budget and also the current focus is actually goes much farther than that. Right now you mentioned about DigiLocker, right? I mean, if I'm able to ship all my documents actually through a DigiLocker, and if I can share that with people and it is secure, I mean, that will do the trick. I don't think that's a problem at all. So that's probably a very, very good forward step actually to put in. So similarly, for example, I myself have been thinking like, now that we have done a lot of good work in, supply chain in terms of hardware, and then in terms of the logistics network, in terms of, network building and all that, what is that we can do actually towards the digitization, right? So right now, I think the space actually for the next probably 5 to 10 years is very specifically is to digitize your enterprises. In fact, how do you do that? Whether actually it's a usage of RF or automation and all those things, but the most important technology that we are going to see in India is RFID. RFID, we are going to see a huge growth in the recent future. Plus, we are going to see a lot of actually solutions around face recognition software. I mean, there are a lot of now law enforcement actually departments such as the police or the CIDs or actually some of the crime solving departments and all, they are using the face recognition extensively already in India, right? Similarly, Gadkari ji has come back and then said, we want to stop all the boom gates across actually the the tollways or even the roadways and all. We are going to use ANPR, which is automatic number plate recognition system and so on, right? Some of these things are going to come more and more actually. I mean, I'm sure you would have seen, most of the advanced countries now, America, Australia, and all these places, you don't have a boom gate at the entrance of even, a local shopping center car park. You enter and exit, and you get actually the money deducted from your wallet actually, which is as simple as that. Also, let's remember what used to happen in India not so long ago. 10 years ago, we still had checkposts. We had, lines and lines of trucks actually stopped at checkposts, trying to give, lots of pieces of paper and so on and so forth, right? Now, all of that has been abolished now, even though there is actually some part of it between state to state, it is still there. But with the introduction of e-way bill and making that e-way bill, in fact, as easy as it could be, I think there's a huge, step forward that's already been taken by the government and the industry. But like Tusharji said, there are a lot more things that need to be simplified. He just gave a very nice example of, the customs actually calling the container and also, summoning the, captain of the ship and so on. So some of those things are ridiculous, right? From the user point of view. I think, some of those commonsensical kind of process simplification has to happen. The good thing is the will is there already with the government. The will is there already with the bureaucrats. The will is there already with the netas and so on, right? So therefore, I think both in terms of digitization as well as probably taking this journey into the tier 3, tier 4 towns, which is the most important part. That is probably well and truly on its way, because you can see a lot of leading retailers now going into all talukas to minimum level. They're at least there in every talukas actually. The supermarkets are there, and then actually some of the transport, the hubs are there, and the pickup and delivery associates are there. What this is doing is to kind of expand the entire landscape, going to probably talukas and hoblis. Imagine this: you having one or two very competent transport actually agencies in every hobli, in every sub talukas, in every kind of main villages, and then he or she will be able to kind of manage the overall logistics or the supply chain activities coming into that village. What kind of employment that's going to create? What kind of actually connectivity that's going to create? Now, thanks to a lot of actually the mobile phone operators and so on, you have, for example, I live in about 70 kilometers away from Bangalore. The network is reliably good. Apart from those couple of minutes that I was offline, it is reliably good actually. So connectivity is already there. The safe, secure sharing opportunity through DigiLocker is already available, in fact. And then if you look at MSME sector particularly, I think there's a lot of actually help and support being given to them. Adding to that, you also have the intent by the government to develop the skills at every level, right from a smaller village all the way to a big metro. So I think combination of all these things, there is definitely a great opportunity on our hands to kind of take this and run with it. Be it a first mile connecting through all the major projects and so on, be it the last mile trying to connect through this digitization, skilling, using DigiLocker and so on, and cutting down the bureaucracy and so on. I think definitely the future looks very bright and very attractive also. What they should also do is probably government should come up with very, very clear schemes to encourage the ITI level training for some of the pickup and delivery associates onwards. Make them semi-skilled, make them skilled so that they can also have a better earning. Make them skilled so that they can also start their own small enterprises in every village. They can start small cold warehouses in every probably gram panchayat or some of the cooperative side of things and so on. I think there has to be some handheld programs which should really go out. I mean, sometimes I even think, what am I doing actually working for a large, modern retail company and so on? Why can't I go and do some of these things? Which, by the way, we are trying to do it anyway. In an academic interest level, I'm already a part of actually some of the initiatives that's happening. To answer Tusharji, Karnataka government has already, given, in fact, projects to build both ambient and cold warehouses at every taluka level in Karnataka, which means farmers can come and use the, the cold chain. They can come and store the produce so that they can actually sell it at a good value rather than, like throwing it away or, selling for nothing literally. So some of those things are happening. Again, India is a very, very vast actually land, right? Therefore, a lot of good things happen. There might be some small things also. People might be using this as an opportunity to kind of, exploit the system also. So there have to be certain checks and balances also, adding to that. So therefore, the landscape is really good. The canvas is looking really bright with a lot of, incentives, lot of actually motivational things, that's coming into the picture. I think it's up to people like us to not only do a good job for our own companies, but what can we do to the community is what probably is going to define the overall journey. That's what I had to say, Sri.
Certainly, sir. We'll have a last set of questions.
Shri, just on a very small comment on digitalization. I think so we have to understand difference between digitization and digitalization. Okay, so there is a journey to go into it. And we as the industry and the government have to partner in that very clearly. Otherwise, you're going to go into the blind rush. The fintech has shown the way, the digitization and digitalization. So today, vegetable vendors now is not ready to give any credit to your wife. If your wife says, "Oh, I doesn't have money," you said, "Okay, do you have a mobile, right? Okay, just pay me on a Paytm. Here is my code." So somebody around on the road also has got. So that's a good journey. So that was a good to learn about digitization and digitalization.
Yes.
I think our industry have to come together in understanding digitization, digitalization. Dr. Anil mentioned about RFID. There are other technologies. He's mentioned about the face recognition technology. And so we need to understand this program. I don't want to waste much time on that subject, but collectively as an industry, we have to come to a common understanding what we want. So we are not, repeating. Okay, over to you, Sri.
Yeah. So last set of questions are on the things that can still be done or the key misses of the budget. If we have to talk, both of you, in terms of what more the government can actually do in terms of supporting the logistics sector. A minute or two from each of you, sir.
Shall I volunteer first?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay. So first, I think the available of finance to the MSME. Now, for an MSME, like say, Dr. Anil would have a truck supplier who has got 3 trucks or 4 trucks or 5 trucks. I think his finance should be made available easily, Of course, up to 85-90% you get finance. But still, they have to go through a lot of processes. Let's give you a simple example from truck, now take you to the aeroplane. If I want to bring a freighter aircraft in this country, and if I want to set up an airline, the waiting process is 12 months.
Wow.
Okay, why it should take 12 months? Right? You look at my viability, look at whether I have money in the bank, right? And then let me do what I want to do. Why you have to be worried about whether I'm bringing right aeroplane, wrong aeroplane? That's my business, right? So I think those things has to be taken shipping. Look at Indian tonnage. Indian tonnage today are registered in Singapore or Malta or somewhere out. Why? We need to question this. Okay? So I think that we need to understand this, number one, in terms of supporting entrepreneur, from small to medium to big.
Right.
I think the other thing, if we do not support small, medium-sized and medium-sized entrepreneur in India and logistics, the multinational will take over the scene. And then you will get into monopoly.
Understood.
Okay? And that's what you should be worried about. So I think the government must allow free finance to make a level playing field. I'll give you a simple example on the MRO, the maintenance of the aircraft, right? Now it is cheaper for Indigo to maintain into Sri Lanka than bring aircraft into India with the indirect taxes. So Indian aircraft are going out. Now why we should have that? It should be a level playing field, right? So these are few things which government need to allow, because logistics is a vast subject. There is gas, there is oil, there is project, there is retail, there is consumer, there is chemicals, and every sector needs an attention. So government now, through the logistics ministry, which we are trying to do at an apex level, giving them each vertical's perspective and what is needed. So that's what is needed. And last, very important, I think government should partner rather than imposing anything. Logistics is not any everybody know. And logistics can be as simple. So when I take my training in my company on a warehouse training, Dr. Anil, I tell on my training session, I said, if you want to learn the warehouse management, you just stand in the kitchen and see how your mother is running the kitchen. When she cooks it, she doesn't know where the red chili is, where the turmeric is, where the stuff. So she blindly takes it out and puts it in, right? And your food is made, which is tasty. So the warehousing management can be as easy as that, as tough as that, right? The technologies are there in the warehousing. I built a warehouse in 2007 with a very narrow aisle, first time in this country. I paid 68% duty on importing those machines.
Wow.
Okay. Now, Anil Bhai will not give me per pallet more than 400 rupees, right? If I go to the
Absolutely.
store, is good. Correct.
Yes.
So, how do we compete? How do we close these two?
Right.
So, and how much government would earn out of those taxes? Very minuscule. Take ATF. Today, ATF, at least on a cargo aircraft, please remove the taxes on it. We paid 32% tax on ATF. Today, a domestic air cargo, if I put in freighter, my cost is 68 rupees a kilo. How that industry will survive when trucking fuel is doing it 5 rupees a kilo and Mr. Gadkari is making roads so efficient that air cargo will never be survive. So I think that we need to take this all into proper. I'm not saying to one take the other side, but government must involve private operators, practitioners to take this holistic view. Because unfortunately, I always call it ourselves, we are like Draupadi, married to 5 Pandavas. So we have to work with shipping ministry, we have to work with surface transport ministry, we have to work with civil aviation ministry, we have to work with finance ministry, we have to work with commerce ministry. So all these guys, sometimes come to, so that has to go. The government has started moving that, but that has to, why should I work for 5 people? Now you have to bring multimodal transport. So cargo has to move from, say, Assam to down to Kerala. Today, a truck costs you 1,38,000. If I move from Assam by rail into Calcutta, put it on a boat, take it to Cochin, my cost is only 48,000 rupees. But difficult to do, mode of transport change. Liability is different, taxation is different. You take a 28-ton container, and the moment you enter into Orissa, they say, no, you can have only 26 ton. Right? Where do I go? I go via Orissa. How do I go to Northeast? So these are few things which government, and everything is not hand of central government.
Yeah.
Something state government has to do. So apart from money, processes, finance, and give that impetus to the small, medium size, because probably in terms of number of logistic company, there are no data available, but nothing less than 48 to 50,000 companies now operating. Right?
Great, sir. Thank you, sir. Dr. Ranil, sir, your last words in terms of the expectations for a minute, and then we can wait.
Yeah, just before probably I get into that, Tusharji, I don't know whether, you can compare, to Draupadi actually, the industry, because Draupadi was a very, very powerful woman, right? She literally could bring down all the 5 Pancha Pandavas into her, muthi and all that, right? I don't know whether we are that powerful, right? Just on the lighter side. Sri, actually going back to what the government should really do is definitely they need to kick off again the apprenticeship programs in a very big way with the logistics industry and supply chain industry. Maybe don't give them any subsidies, but give them tax offs, tax breaks actually. Don't even hand out any money, but then make their own money work for themselves, because this came actually about 7-8 years ago, which became a very, very popular kind of a solution. That is what is needed. Every smallest transport company should be given encouragement to kind of groom the apprentices and build that kind of as an industry. Then you will actually groom probably truckloads of talent, which is what is required actually. That's probably the number one thing, in fact. And definitely, I agree with Tusharji in terms of removing the bureaucracy from various levels actually. For example, I don't know, one of my MSME vendor was saying that, or some of them, they were saying that I believe they need to start paying the GST the moment they invoice it. I mean, this is one constant complaint that we've been hearing. Before even the payment might take, 90 days, 120 days, 60 days, whatever it is. But then for that guy, he already doesn't have money. So for him to kind of actually pay the GST upfront before even he receives the payment, it's probably like a bit of a cruelty. I mean, I'm not an expert on that field, but in issues like that, particularly with the GST issues or taxation issues, and by all means, please go for 100% compliance and then 100% regimental execution, all of those things. But then be sensitive to some of these ground level issues actually. And even government doesn't even have to partner with it. Government can ask the respective banks to partner with. Government can ask actually the respective financial institutions to kind of do the due diligence and then give them some, relief or some sort of actually, comfort level, in fact. So some of these things probably have to happen. And then I think we did not speak today at all, on some of the probably the focus that has been on the EV side of things, the electric vehicles and the kind of, the promotion that they are giving. And that's one area where there is a huge opportunity for not only government, but also for the industry to take cue and then kind of run with it. For example, if there is a fund for logistics industries to start using EVs, be it a two-wheeler for a last mile delivery or a large 40-foot container trailer, right? If there is actually availability of funds, availability of some schemes or grants and so on, which is available in, by the way, a lot of countries such as America, Australia and all that. If we can actually have some of those things, then you will actually put a carrot in front of the industry and then they will start using it. So if we can have some of those things, right, I think that will definitely, encourage and then kind of increase the adoption of EV. There is definitely no doubt in my mind that, in the next probably 20, 30, 50 years, lot of alternate energy vehicles will be running, be it actually lithium ion battery or electric, normal electric ones, or even any other new technology and so on. But logistics industry is one of the biggest contributors for carbon emission. So if we can actually have some specific project-oriented proposals, project-oriented partnerships from government, I think that will definitely take this budget and take this particular intent a long, long way. So therefore, I think overall, in my conclusion, I would like to, definitely appreciate the kind of, focus that has been put on the infrastructure, digitalization, in fact, and then, the green, energy or a green, in fact, the journey towards net zero by 2070 and so on. Plus, last but not the least, actually upskilling a lot of talent, in this space. I think these 3 or 4 things actually go a long way. And then I think it's been a phenomenal budget, a phenomenal intent that has been declared by the finance minister. And I think as a country, we are going to go and then probably, create a lot of, historical feats, in fact, in the years to come. Thank you, Sri.
Great, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Tusharji, and thank you, Dr. Anil. In the interest of time, that was our last question. Thanks again, and it's always a pleasure to listen to you, both of you. Over to you, Rachayita. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Shri, and thank you, Anil sir. Thank you, Tushar sir. That was a really informative session. And Tushar sir, your anecdotes, amazing. I love them as always. So before we, move towards the end, I'd like to take just one question. We have just one question here. Feel free to answer it as you please. Jay Chandra Anamala, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Now, this person asks, Modi ji is going to start ethanol blending and usage project at Bengaluru 2 years ahead of the deadline. How this will impact the Indian logistics?
Well, okay, go ahead, Dr. Anil Bhai.
Tusharji, I was going to say, like, for example, I was in Australia almost like, for about 17, 18 years, but then the E10 ethanol based, the fuel has been actually part of the economy there for the last 2 decades. It's not even actually that, anything new in that sense, but then completely ethanol based. And if it is probably, proven by, because I'm also, at my heart, I'm a very, very big automotive buff. In fact, I'm a mechanical engineer. So I would love to kind of see alternate energy driven vehicles or, that sector. But then if the technology can prove, beneficial to the industry, I'm sure logistics industry will probably adopt, without any encouragement. Because in India, we always ask the first question, kitna deta hai, right? So if the ethanol can give per mileage actually reduce cost, logistics industry will be the first one to embrace it. That's what I had to say in short.
I agree with what Anil Bhai said. I mean, listen, we are Indian, and those truck operator guys are much smarter than us.
Absolutely.
If per trip they save money, why they would not?
Absolutely.
But I think so it's a long way journey. Whatever scientific data I've read, and
Yes.
I can tell you, SAF in the aviation side is still long way to go, even in
Yes.
Europe and abroad. But I think so hydrogen will come earlier, probably than ethanol. And India should concentrate on hydrogen in my mind because that's easy to do it, easy to distribute, easy to give. I personally feel hydrogen would be faster for size of the country what we are in. But ethanol, more so, I think, so, which is not said, is available freely in India because of
Yes.
our sugar cane and sugar. It's a byproduct of sugar.
Yes.
So, on a corporate movement, sugar mills will make a lot of money.
Correct.
Right, right. Shri, do you want to add anything to
Yeah,
it?
yeah. We recently did a study with regard to how possible, in terms of the blending aspect is going to happen. We did a study in terms of the OEM's readiness towards this particular aspect. What kind of potential impact could be there? Our reading is that, from an OEM's readiness standpoint, it is not going to be much of a challenge in terms of meeting the implementation timelines, because the cost implications are also not, capex needs are also not significant. What we observed was a challenge with regard to the availability. From a supply side availability perspective, making ethanol available in adequate quantities across the country and addressing the portability related challenges. That is something, a critical challenge that we saw. Another thing with regard to the compatibility issues of the existing vehicle park, where we talked about the E10 designed vehicles with the E20 fuel. That is something, the compatibility issues remains monitorable. If that is not getting addressed, what could potentially happen is that the corrosion of the engine components could get kind of accelerated, specifically the fuel,
Absolutely.
and
Yes.
there could be only a few further loss of fuel efficiency. So there are some implementation related challenges. The ramp up capacity is something, from a supply side is also seen, but from an OEM's readiness standpoint, automotive industry is very much capable of and handling this particular thing. So this is taking leave from Brazil. This is the way forward, and it's in the step in the right direction, I would say.
Right, right. And I think, I mean, when it comes to alternate fuels or green fuels, unless the you talked about availability, so unless I think the availability is, kind of increased, and in-house production, what can be probably called, I think I can do that. So if until that increases, the cost of applying those alternate fuels will remain high, and that will in turn, diminish the number of or the percentage of people that make that sustainable energy move. Anyways, from this this very interesting conversation that you guys were having, I'm really excited. I really want to give my 2 cents. I really hope you all don't mind, and neither does the audience. I think it's really true that the logistics sector can immensely improve a country's journey towards economic development, and it won't be wrong if I connect somewhat the initiatives of the budget of the last year, plus the Gati Shakti National Master Plan, which was already ongoing when last year's budget was announced, then the national logistics policy that was announced recently. So if I connect these dots, I think it is due to a combination of all of them that India's economy has grown by 7% in the last year, as told by our finance minister. But that being said, of course, there are many changes that are still required for us to be one of the world's top transshipment and logistics hub. Now, there were discussions about public-private partnership during the last post-budget session that we had, and the FM. I think the finance minister took care of that by ensuring that development takes support from such public-private partnership. Uh, on another note, the shift towards rail has an integral part of logistic operations, will also mean a considerable reduction in the logistics cost, as well as helping us realize our sustainability goals, when of course coupled with other initiatives, and the increased railways outlay should be able to push that further. Now, Tushasa, I remember two things vividly from our last discussion. First is that the way how a mother manages her kitchen, and how you related it to the warehouse, of course. But then the other part that you also mentioned in our post budget discussion last year was the importance of skill development of the workforce, as well as how it is very important to ensure the efficient execution of the measures proposed by the budget. So in that direction, I think this year's budget has very well focused on skill development, and for that matter, industry based skill development. And not only will this improve the quality of human resource, as I mentioned while starting this session, not only will it improve the quality of human resource available to the industry, but will also make our workforce somewhat at par with the global standards in the long run. Now, there's one more point I'd like to add. Now, being someone who is extremely concerned with how our environment is degrading, I personally take pain when I see such documentaries and all. But and what we can do to slow it down, if not stop it, as individuals or as organizations. I think the budgetary announcements towards sustainability were very well received, from reducing the dependence on fossil fuels to promotion of electric vehicles and priority investment towards energy transition are going to completely change the face of India's supply chain sector's energy consumption statistics in the coming years. Now, with this, I would like to draw the curtains on today's show. And I really thank all our speakers for taking out time to join us today for this discussion. Thank you, audience, for the engagement, and thank you, Shri, for a wonderful moderation. So see you next time, next year. Until then, this is me, Rachayata, signing off. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're signing off.